Should it say that it's streaming too, or maybe I can't see that right now?
So we are we're streaming through channel 17, who has joined this meeting, and then they take the feed from what they see and then stream it to all of our platforms.
Okay, wow, that's fancy. Okay, sorry, didn't mean to hold us up. Great. So welcome everyone to the May 12th, 2020 Special City Council meeting. Please let the record reflect that all council members are present. This evening, we're going to start with a recognition, a proposed joint resolution, which is an anti-xenophobia resolution, and we've asked Councilmember Lopez to read that, and we have Priscilla Martinez from the Diversity Commission to accept.
Thank you, Chair. It is really a great honor. Thank you to you and all my colleagues to give me the opportunity to read this very important resolution, challenging Ogden residents to celebrate diversity and inclusion and to take a stand against xenophobia and racism in our community. Whereas Ogden City owes much of its success to its diverse population, each member of the community plays a vital role in the growth and development of our city. Because of this, it is crucial that everyone is kind to one another and treats each other with dignity and respect. Unfortunately, xenophobia, discrimination, and racism can threaten the safety and security of our community. And whereas xenophobia is the fear and hatred of strangers or people from different countries or cultures, this has no place in Ogden City, but all too often, it is prevalent throughout the world and in our community. We must work together to prevent and combat xenophobia and racism of any kind. And whereas it is crucial now more than ever that we come together as a community, public health emergencies such as the outbreak of coronavirus are stressful times for people and communities. Fear and anxiety about a disease can lead to social stigma towards people, places, or things. For example, stigma and discrimination can occur when people associate a disease such as COVID-19 with a population or nationality. Diseases do not discriminate. And whereas stigma hurts everyone by creating fear or anger towards other people, additionally, stigmatized groups may be subject to social rejection, denial of healthcare, education, housing, or employment, and physical violence. And whereas we must advance and support a healthy climate of inclusivity, respect, and diversity during these difficult times, we must raise awareness of COVID-19 without increasing fear. We must learn the facts about COVID-19 and stop the spread of rumors. And whereas Ogden City condemns all forms of xenophobia, racism, and intolerance, in these times of uncertainty, we must work together to make sure everyone in our community feels loved and valued. As we help one another stand united, Ogden City will come out of the COVID-19 pandemic stronger than before. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Ogden City Council and Mayor Michael P. Caldwell hereby commit to create a community of diversity and inclusiveness and to discourage xenophobia of any form. We appreciate the efforts of the Utah Division of Multicultural Affairs, Weber State's Diversity Office, the Ogden Diversity Office, the Ogden Diversity Commission, and all others who promote diversity and equity within our community. And with that, I would like to propose that we adopt this joint resolution 2020-3.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember Lopez and a second by Councilmember Nadolski to pass the resolution. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. And thank you so much, Councilmember Lopez, for bringing this idea up in our past meeting.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And Priscilla, normally we would be shaking your hand and welcome you to the podium to make a statement. Thanks so much for being with us. Would you like to make any statement?
Yes, I would. Thank you so much for inviting me tonight. As I was thinking of what to say, and as I was reading the joint resolution on anti-xenophobia, what really came to my mind is how proud I am of the city and the direction that we are all moving forward to. And I believe the commissioners would also agree with me. This joint resolution is a reflection of what the city values, what we stand for, and what we will not tolerate. As we all know, the effects of xenophobia can profoundly affect not only the individuals, but communities as well. So the joint resolution that Councilmember Luis described clearly says that xenophobia, discrimination, and racism can threaten the safety and security of our community. So in order to move forward, xenophobia has no place within our community, and we must, as a city, pave the way to promote positivity around inclusivity. And as of my fellow colleague and Commissioner Adrian Andrews, who is not here, would say, we are a part of a shared humanity, and we must respond with unity and compassion. So I'm honored to accept this anti-xenophobia joint resolution on behalf of the Ogden Diversity Commission. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks again so much for coming.
Thank you.
Now this evening we have public hearings. We're going to be hearing a presentation from Ward Ogden Community Development Manager and Kathy Fuentes, the CED Project Coordinator. We're going to present the fiscal year 2021 to 2025 Consolidated Plan and the fiscal year 2021 Annual Action Plan. So they're going to present that as well as the proposed Own an Ogden program guidelines. And then we will take public input from those of you that are joining us on the call, and we'll talk more about how you'll participate in that after they give their presentations.
Thank you very much. This is Ward Ogden. I'm the Community Development Manager, and I am attempting to share my screen.
Welcome. Thank you so much.
Let's see if this works. Are we there?
It's beginning. Yes, now it's there.
Okay, great. We have spent a year working towards the development and adoption of the consolidated plan. It's been a long year with a lot of public and council input. I just kind of want to go over very quickly. We've met with the council 9 times, including tonight. There was, starting in September, we had some housing fact-finding sessions. We adopted a citizen participation plan. We talked through and adopted an analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. We held a couple of work sessions, work session in November, another one in February, another one in April, and now a final adoption in May. We've met with our Citizen Advisory Committee 4 times, numerous presentations to partner groups and outside entities interested in developing and giving input into the consolidated plan. The consolidated plan is, it's a 5-year plan. And the documents, as Council Chair mentioned, involve a 5-year plan, an annual action plan, which includes a budget and strategies for implementation in each year. And so we'll be adopting one plan for the upcoming fiscal year. It includes a few things that are new as of the past month or so. With the pandemic, some new money has become available. And so that becomes a new source. It's Community Development Block Grant CV. A new national objective has been given to us so that we can have some further flexibility in the administration of the funds. We have a neighborhood revitalization strategy and an analysis of impediments to fair housing choice, and then again the Own an Ogden program guideline changes. The consolidated plan is the mechanism for receiving HUD funding. It's a strategic planning tool that identifies the priority needs in the community, outlines programs and projects to address those needs, and it requires citizen participation. And anything that we do needs to fall within the context of those strategies and plans. It involves the AI as well, the analysis of impediments. Let's see. When we pass this plan and submit it to HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, we become entitled to Community Development Block Grant and the Home Investment Partnership Grant. These have been ongoing for many years now. The Home Grant since the early 90s and the Community Development Block Grant since the 1970s. And again, as I mentioned, the HUD requires that if we're doing anything with these funds, we have to have that in our plan. And there's a procedure for amending the plan as well, which we do generally every year. We have a small amendment to adjust dollars and carry forward funds each year in the budget. Each of the, as I mentioned before, each of the HUD-funded programs needs to meet a national objective, and these are for the use of the Community Development Block Grant. Each needs to meet a benefit. It either needs to meet one of these three. That benefits low and moderate income persons. 70% of our funds go towards, at least minimum 70% towards benefiting low and moderate income persons. 30% can go to either the urgent need or the slum and blight alleviation. The urgent need is only upon designation by the federal government. And the pandemic has been determined to be an urgent need. So they've allowed us to be able to use that objective now. This just kind of goes over what I was just talking about. The urgent need activities that we do must prevent, prepare for, or respond to the pandemic. It allows us to help more businesses through our small business loans program, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Dealing with the economic loss, and again, 30% of this is a maximum of 30% of the funds can be used towards the urgent need. The Community Development Block Grant CV money is allocated through a recent CARES Act. We've probably all heard about that act. It was just passed a few weeks ago. And behind the scenes, the federal government, Housing and Urban Development, and many other agencies have been scrambling to find ways to quickly get this money out and to go through the required public processes to put these funds into our budget and into our plans. And so we've been working diligently over the past month or so to update our consolidated plan drafts and to include these funds into that plan. And Ogden City was awarded $609,198. And again, as we talked about, it gives us some added flexibility in how we can help small businesses. Prevent, prepare for, and respond to the virus. These CV funds need to meet a national objective. They can meet any of the national objectives, frankly, but they also have to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus. So it's tightly tied to those purposes. And then we have to do a duplication of benefits analysis, which basically says that if someone is receiving benefits through another federal program, they can't duplicate those dollars or duplicate that benefit through receiving CV money. So we have to look and see if the small business loan is offering funds and providing funds. We can't give them the same dollars. We can add to them, but we can't replace those dollars and duplicate them.
Can I ask a question, Ward, about that?
Go ahead.
So does that mean if a business took advantage of the PPP loan / grant, that they wouldn't be available for anything else, or?
Well, that's not necessarily true. It really comes down to what is their need. And so if the PPP loan provides, that's the payroll protection program. If the PPP loan gives them a portion of what they need, then we can step in and help them with the rest of what they need. So it doesn't preclude them from getting both. We just don't want to give them funds to, that would replace the same, put two fund sources in for the same exact payment.
Okay, I understand. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Or do they have to pay back this loan that they receive? Do they have to pay back this loan that they receive?
Right. Yes. These are repayment loans that are worked through our small business loan program.
At what interest?
But they're those are under our. I think Kathy might be able to answer that a little bit better than I. But I think they adjust the rate based on how the underwriting goes for the loan. I think there's a maximum interest rate that they can charge, but it's a low interest rate, and favorable terms, obviously, to help out the businesses. But
so who are the businesses paying back? Are they paying back the city? Or are they paying back this program, this CDBG?
Right.
These funds are actually an entitlement. They come through the entitlement process just like our block grant does, and so these are our dollars, and yes, they do get repaid
to the city.
Yes, to the city.
Okay.
And so these funds came to us, and so these are city funds.
Okay,
just like our block grant is, right? So anyway, it's administered basically the same. It's through the same mechanism that HUD uses for the block grant. There are additional CARES Act funding entitlement sources that Ogden City is not a party to, but can have a great help in things such as homeless prevention, emergency shelter grants, and housing opportunities for persons with AIDS, and rental assistance for low-income renters as well. And just as late as today, the state of Utah was awarded just over $5 million in an additional CARES Act funding of block grant, which that doesn't come to the city, it goes to the state. But the state can use that for some very targeted purposes, and the state is working through that process now as well. Moving on to the consolidated plan, we have priority needs and programs that fall within those national objectives. And I'll just quickly go through these. These are the programs and objectives that we are meeting. In the community development side, we have improved the quality and increased the supply of decent, affordable housing. And we do that through our Quality Neighborhoods program, our emergency home repair program, and our infill housing program. We expand homeownership opportunities through our Own in Ogden program, and we improve the safety and physical appearance of neighborhoods through our target area public improvements. On the business development side, the objective of creating greater access to capital is achieved through the microenterprise loan program. And stimulating economic growth, that objective is met through business information center counseling and business startup initiatives. And the small business loan programs that are funded both by the block grant and the CDBG CV, and the special economic development projects. So that's the overall framework of the consolidated plan, and that's the 5-year strategies, and there are strategies and goals for each of those areas. And then within the context of each year, we adopt a budget, and then we have a specific action plan for undertaking those projects and programs in each year. So that's our action plan. And again, it's our application for our block grant and home funds. It details the budget, the goals, and the programs to be funded. And again, if it's not in the action plan, then we can't pay for it. Here's a breakdown of our sources of funds. Total of the block grant, this includes the block grant CV money as well. $666,000 in program income. Our entitlement is just over $1 million with carryover of just over $1 million. And our CV money is the $609,198. In our home budget, we have an entitlement of $485,000. We're carrying over $518,000. And our program income anticipated in this year is $117,000. Here's the way that we're proposing that the funds be spent. These are the line items in the pie chart. The largest one is the Quality Neighborhoods Program at $1.2 million. When combined, the small business loans is just over that amount. Special economic development at $180,000, small business loans at $421,000, microenterprise of $280,000, and then the small business loan program with just the CV money broken out is $478,000. We have a small amount for carrying forward our some of our costs and wrapping up some infill housing projects. And then an amount for our admin that pays staff costs and overhead from block grant and the CV money as well. Our BIC is funded at $55,000 and public improvements at $250,000.
Ward, is this a good time to ask about the change in the CDBG CV funding to the small business loan program from the micro enterprise from the small business loan? Or are you going to talk about that later?
We can do it right now if you like. Sure. There, in an earlier iteration, there was a proposal to do to put all of the CV money into the small business loan program. But it turns out that as we learn new things almost daily. And as of Friday, we learned that the CV money needs to meet its own 70% ratio of low mod benefit. And so in order to do that, for that to be feasible, micro enterprises are almost exclusively low and moderate income business owners. And so it's appropriate to put some money into micro enterprise to help them. What we were thinking earlier was that even if those businesses were micro enterprises, they could always apply for the small business loan and get the same loan, but they wouldn't have to qualify on the basis of income. They would just do it on the basis of urgent need. And now that we realize that we can't blanket that urgent need thing across all of our block grant, we have to separate it for each of the grants, the block grant and the CV grant. We now need to meet some low mod benefit from the CV money. That's probably way more technical than people wanted to hear, but there's reasons for moving some of the money around so that there's greater flexibility and greater opportunity for assisting businesses and still meeting our national objectives. I hope that answered the question.
It did. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. Our home grant, most of that, of course, goes into our Quality Neighborhoods program for housing development and renovation and sale. And then our highly popular Own in Ogden program, $250,000, and then some administrative funds as well. Now we're going to talk briefly about each of the programs. And again, this is to just sort of reiterate how the plan is broken out and where those funds are allocated. In our Quality Neighborhoods program, of course, we alleviate slum and blight, eliminate substandard units, and rehab and resale properties with home money, $800,000, and match funds and block grant of $1 million. And then there are some housing funds for a total of $2 million. So those are the total sources with the goals of 25 total projects. And again, these are just the federally funded ones. We don't promise to HUD that we're going to do things with non-federal funds, but we always do. We just put the federally funded ones in this goal chart. It just gives us added flexibility. The priority need of increasing the supply of affordable housing under the emergency home repair program, $40,000 there, and a goal of 5 per year. And we generally meet that and exceed that. Infill housing, again, we're just wrapping up the Stonehill project, and a small amount is allocated there. So as you see, we'll have 6 homes this year, and then next year 3, and then we'll see how it goes. We're dealing with the market, and we'll have to see how things come out of the downturn and where we go from there. So the goals can be amended and changed, and new things come up as we see how the economy's going. The Own and Ogden program, our down payment assistance, $250,000, and a goal of 45 loans per year. Target area public improvements, setting aside enough funds to do a fairly major project every other year. And these are in targeted neighborhoods that synergize with some of our other housing rehab and development projects. The microenterprise loan program, again, we've got the block grant and the CV money combined for $280,000. And looking at 5 per year, of course, this could fluctuate wildly based on how many loans come in, but we understand there's a great need. So these are minimum goals. The BIC, of course, does counseling to upwards of 500 business owners and individuals each year. Small business loan program, we measure these in, for the low and moderate income benefit, we measure them in jobs created. $1 million there with the combined block grant and the CV money. And we're anticipating as many as 20 urgent need loans for the next year or two, and creating at least 8 jobs, or creating or retaining 8 jobs per year. Just one thing to point out on that CV money is that we have until September 30th of 2023 to spend that money. Special economic development of $180,000, and there's a potential for some urgent need in there as well. One of the things that HUD has asked us to consider, and we're one of a few communities that are able to make use of this and really maximize the potential for a neighborhood revitalization strategy area. This is, again, strongly encouraged by HUD. It creates communities of opportunity in distressed neighborhood. It identifies target areas for concentration of federally funded programs. And the goal is to stimulate reinvestment in the community and empower low-income residents as part of an overall comprehensive community revitalization strategy. And they give us some incentives and some flexibilities as we do this. In the past several years, we've had the chart on the left, we've had those census tracts, which basically is our East Central neighborhood and the neighborhood, the Jefferson area, most of the Jefferson area surrounding the downtown. This year, we're proposing for the next 5 years to add Census Tract 2018. And there's some rationale for that. It's identified as a racially concentrated area of poverty. And it would help us to leverage the work of some of our partners. The Habitat for Humanity, Youth Build, and the Weber Housing Authority are doing projects in this area. So we'd like to be able to work with them. Some of the characteristics of the additional Census Tract 2018 is that here's the population. Looks like the population is actually dropping just a little bit. The minority population's around 64%, relatively high poverty rate, fairly low owner occupancy rate, and a fairly high vacancy rate as well. So it's indicators of need here. So we'd like to, as part of our plan, include a new census tract into give us some broaden our targeting in the NRSA. As part of our development of the consolidated plan, and as you recall, back in September, on September 3rd, September 10th, we discussed the analysis of impediments, the fair housing choice. This is an analysis that helps us to drive some of our thoughts and policies and procedures for our consolidated plan.
Warren, I feel bad for interrupting you, but I feel like I should ask you a question before you move on, because then you have to go back a little ways. Is that okay?
Yeah, fine.
I'm going to go back 2 slides to some of that demographic information. I guess I'm wondering, and I think we've talked about this before, but just, so if there's other people watching or at this meeting for the first time, can you talk a little bit about what we do to help the folks that are currently living there become part of that owner-occupied housing that we're attempting to help to establish in the neighborhood?
Sure. We of course, are looking for housing development opportunities there. We did our the Lincoln Cottage project was very close in that overall area. We have some building sites now that we're working on with the Weber Housing Authority, as well as one of our own. We have just recently we've had a number of Own in Ogden applicants from that area as well. So in terms of promoting owner occupancy, we've also worked with the Ogden Housing Authority in developing some new housing that is available to low and moderate income households who will eventually become homeowners. So those are a few of the things that we've been working on. And of course, working with the partners, we've had discussions with Habitat for Humanity and Weber Housing Authority, and trying to help promote their initiatives, the homes that they're building, and the work that they're doing with putting together volunteer groups for home repairs and things like that.
Right. And I understand a lot of that. I guess what I'm asking, I have to think about another way to ask. Do you have data around how many of the folks that, when you're working in these areas, how many of them that live there already that actually then gain owner occupancy through this process?
Yeah. In that specific neighborhood, we don't have data there. But that would be an interesting thing to come back to you with, in terms of where are the people living before they purchase a home, say, with our Own in Ogden program.
Yeah, and I guess since we've been doing it so long, I thought maybe that would be something that we would be tracking in some of the other census tracks.
Sure. Yeah, that's the thing that I can't report on right now, but that's a good question.
Ward, I have one question on the rent-occupied home units. Seems like it's gone up 20% in the last, 13 years?
Yeah.
What's driving that? It seems like we're trying to gear toward more owner-occupied, but It looks like the rent-occupied is increasing quicker than what the owner-occupied is.
Of course. Yeah, and that's of course owners moving out and renting their properties or selling to landlords. That's obviously an indicator of decline when the rates change to that degree, and so that's a reason why we would want to step in and try and help.
Okay, and when they purchase a home, is they have to be in it 10 years?
Well,
before they leave, or what?
It's basically a due on sale loan. So we ask them to stay as long, obviously as long as they want, but people generally stay 5 to 7 years at a minimum.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right.
Okay. Should we move on?
Yes. Thank you so much for going back.
Okay. No worries. The analysis of impediments is part of there's a law that says basically we have to go through there's a law saying affirmatively further fair housing choice, and doing the analysis is how we meet that requirement. There were some impediments that were identified, and we have in our action plan, we've got 28 action items that address these impediments. We have uneven fair housing infrastructure, deteriorating quality of housing in the racially concentrated areas of poverty, weak job transit connections, landlords' lack of familiarity with Fair Housing Act, and high rates of foreclosures and evictions. And so we've got strategies in the action plan to address those things. Moving on to the program guidelines, just to inform everyone, we reference and fund programs through our action plans, but the guidelines for those action plans are not included, and we're not responsible to HUD. In other words, we don't have to get HUD's approval for the specific loan guideline. We choose the guideline as long as it meets the federal guidelines, if you know what I mean. So we don't put program guidelines in our action plan. So this is kind of a standalone item that comes along with the action plan, but it's not included in the action plan. So we're kind of stepping aside for a moment to talk about the Own in Ogden program. As part of the discussions with the council regarding housing needs and issues over the past year, we've proposed to address the issue of retention for police officers and firefighters who may leave for other jobs after receiving training in Ogden. And so there was a concern that we would train them and then they would leave. So as an incentive and to provide a mechanism for retention, the proposal was to increase the amount of assistance that would be available to officers and firefighters up to $20,000, and that the loan would be forgivable after 10 years of owner occupancy and continued Ogden City employment. The typical loans are due on sale regardless of how long they've lived there. But the thought was to provide an incentive for officers to stay a minimum of 10 years. If they're there 10 years, they're likely to stay longer, and they're bought into their home and the situation a bit more. And then also, if we could find some funds that were not tied to income restrictions, that we could make them available to officers and firefighters regardless of income. So those are the changes that are proposed to the Own in Ogden program.
Thanks, Ward, for making those changes. I think they're a good addition.
Yeah, thank you. And it's been a long presentation. We really appreciate the times that we've had to visit and talk and deliberate over housing and community development and economic development issues over the past year, and all the presentations and discussions we've had with citizens and our citizen advisory committee, and particularly the council staff, has been very helpful. We really appreciate them. And so I think we're done and open for questions.
Thank you so much. Any questions from council members?
Hey, Ward, I have a quick question. This is Marcia. And it's a question that we get from constituents a lot, maybe those from nonprofits. So other cities use CDBG money to augment or grant nonprofits, specific money for their specific services. Why does Ogden City not do that? Or why is that not a focus of the CDBG money? And if you could just give us a quick overview of that, that would be great.
Sure. Public service, well, I'll take one step back just a little bit and say that the original, when the block grant was enacted, it was enacted as primarily a physical development program. And so that's really kind of the reason it exists. We do economic development as well. And public services are eligible as a supplement to the community development initiatives that we do. So it's clearly eligible, and many cities do that. We found that and we've talked about this over the years numerous times. Every time we do a consolidated plan, and for several decades in the past, we've we've said, okay, so why is our philosophy moving forward? Are we thinking, is there a reason to change the original philosophy on the block grant use? And it comes up every time. The one of the points of analysis that I've done is that there are some smaller cities our size who public service grants to nonprofits. Most of the cities that are our size that do that, they really just have a whole different way of approaching their block grant administration. They just go for what's eligible, and they broaden it out across who's eligible. Many of the successful public service grants are done by the very large cities, the cities that really need and can afford that use. But in our case, our philosophy has been, the administration's proposals each time this comes up, is that we stay the course with our focus on revitalizing neighborhoods and bringing them back from decline, generations-long declines, and in doing economic development. And so when the issue comes up, we try to work with the partners, because we recognize they do great work. We try to help them find funds that are in line with their mission, and that maybe just a little bit more appropriate in terms of where those funds are at and where they come from. So hopefully that kind of gets at that issue.
Yeah, that answers it. And I think that it's just just a different focus for us, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate us staying the course on that. So I just know that it comes up quite often as we interact with a lot of our nonprofits around the city. So
right,
I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Hi, this is Kathy Fuentes, Project Coordinator for Community Development Division.
Hi,
if I could just briefly explain to you the changes that were proposed this morning to the comp plan board. Can you bring the PowerPoint back up and go to the microenterprise program page? I don't know if you can go back there. What we're proposing as of today, that was submitted in the comp plan today, that Glenn is going to substitute, is just taking the micro enterprise loan program as it was presented and making it into two micro enterprise programs, one funded with only CDBG and one funded with CDBG CV. So it will actually be two programs right here. So instead of it will be micro enterprise loan program CDBG 180,000 with those goals, and then we'll have a CV micro enterprise loan program with $100,000 CDBG CV. So this will be split into two programs. And then if you go to the small business loan program page, Ward, which is more slide right here. And the same will happen with the small business loan program. We will be having two small business loan programs, one small business loan program with CDBG funding and one small business loan program with CDBG CV funding. And that is at the guidance of HUD. They want the CDBG CV funding in separate programs. So, and the goals will also change because there are two programs. The goals are actually going to increase because there's going to be two separate programs, and each program will have goals. So that is what we're proposing today. So sorry for that late notice. Any questions on those changes?
The fund sources remain the same. It's really just a matter of breaking them out so that they have their own tracking mechanism in the HUD financial system.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That definitely helps. Are there any other questions from council members?
I have one for Ward. I'd like to go back to the neighborhood revitalization strategy area.
Okay.
I purchase a home in there and it's set up for 15 years. And then I get up to the 10th year and I say, well, I'm going to sell it or I'm going to rent it out. do I have to pay back that difference, or how does that work? The reason I ask that question is that the longer we have people stay in the neighborhood, more vital and revitalization that is for that neighborhood, and it reduces our number of rentals. So is there a penalty if I purchase a home and decide to sell it to someone or rent it out to someone? So,
well, it's not necessarily a penalty. It just means you have to pay the money back. So I guess one silver lining on that is people choose, and we don't restrict their movement. But what we can do, and the silver lining is that many times when a home is sold, the owner pays back the Own in Ogden program, and then someone else buys the house and uses Own in Ogden to buy the same house. So perpetuating the owner occupancy is really something that we've seen happen a lot, and that's been a big impact, a big positive impact in the Own in Ogden program, is keeping homes owner occupied and keeping people in an opportunity to purchase a home.
Yeah, I think that's the real goal that we have, because when I came onto the council, we had a lot of rentals up into the east area of Ogden, and we've tried diligently to maybe decrease that number down.
Yep, it has made a difference.
Okay.
And I guess just to follow up on my question earlier, is there a way, or I guess would it be possible that people in the application process for, maybe not the Own in Ogden program, but the other programs, where they could have like a sort of advantage of applying for those home loans over, if they're living in the same census tract as where the house is being built and changed? Is there any advantage for people coming from that census tract, or even all the census tracts that are within these areas? Is there a way that we could do that? Because I guess that's kind of the crux of the issue for some folks, is that they're worried and concerned that we're kind of pushing people out of the city, which I know is not our goal. But I wonder if there's any incentive for people that are applying for homes that live within those census tracts.
I'm not sure I quite understand. If an applicant, I guess that would be an issue if we had scarcity to the point where people had to compete for the dollars. But in general, we've found that we can help just about everyone that comes through the door. There are times when the funds get low and towards the end of the year, and sometimes we'll find additional funds and bring them in through a budget opening to help. But I think that we're able to help just about everybody that wants to buy a home. So if they're in the census tract and want to buy a home there, we can generally help them do that. Okay, but we're not really tracking that data, so it makes it challenging to know if it's working or not. Right. Well, we do have information on where they came from, so we do in fact know where they came from. So that's just something we'd have to do a data run to find out and do that correlation. But it's a really good question. Yeah. Any other questions? I'm trying to move my screen so I can see people's faces. I don't think I see any additional questions. So I guess thank you so much, Ward and Kathy. Now we can have time for public input, and maybe I'll ask Brandon to give people directions about how to do that.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, if you are joining us via Zoom, you can raise your hand, which there's a button to do so in the bottom of your screen, and then that will put you in the queue, and then we will go through each person that has raised their hand, and we will unmute you, and you will have 3 minutes to participate in the public hearing. I don't know if that was everything, but Yeah.
think so. And then I think just remember to say your name before you start speaking. We give it a few more minutes just to make sure that people have an opportunity. I'm not seeing any hands raised, unless I'm wrong about that.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I second it.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Councilmember Stevens to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So I don't know if there's any further discussion on that item or if anybody would like to make a motion.
Okay, Chair, I'll make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2020-11 with substitute Exhibit A, clarifying the use of CDBG-CV grant funding.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, a second by Councilmember White to adopt the resolution 2020-11. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Heyer,
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez,
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski,
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens,
Did you hear Doug?
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair,
Aye.
Chair Chaburka.
Aye, and that passes. Thank you.
Chair, if I could make a quick comment. I appreciate all the outreach that these guys did. I know that it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to deal with the guidelines within HUD, and I appreciate that they are continuing to keep on track and keep on top of that. So that's a lot of work for them, and I know that it's a difficult to change right in midstream because I know that they had a different direction last week, but I appreciate that they were able to do that and keep us on the up and up with HUD. So thank you, Ward and Kathy, for doing that.
Yes, agreed. And I really appreciate you visiting with the council so many times and taking our questions and feedback. Would anybody else like to make any comment or move on to another motion for the proposed Owen and Ogden program guidelines?
Well, Chair, I'll make another motion then to adopt Resolution 2020-10.
I second it.
A motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Councilmember Stevens to adopt Resolution 2020-10. This is also a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez,
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski,
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer,
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair,
Aye.
Chair Chaburka.
Aye, and that passes. Thank you. And now we'll invite Lisa Stout, our comptroller, to speak with us about the fiscal year 2020 budget amendment.
Thank you, Chair Chaburka. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Let me share my screen. Okay, is that showing up okay?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
As a full screen presentation.
It is, but my eyesight is getting worse. Not because of you, I don't think, but.
My eyesight's pretty bad too, so I empathize with that. in fiscal year 20, the City Council, we identified $628,000 to be set aside for City Council to appropriate to projects identified through the strategic plan initiative. And the complete list that was formulated in December is before you now in this presentation. As things have changed and the economy has changed, Council has decided to abbreviate that plan at this time, and the budget action before you to appropriate an additional $273,925,000 to the city budget would set aside $305,000 of this $628,000 to be appropriated in the future, and appropriate $5,000 now to planning notice design, $20,000 to the purchase of boxing equipment for the Marshall White Center, $25,000 to the purchase of equipment for the comp recreation program, and also to appropriate money to the CIP, the sidewalk, streetlights, and neighborhood traffic control. These would be appropriated using project accounting. So if funds are not expended fully for these purposes at June 30th, it would be carried forward into fiscal year 21. So we can control the spending for the purpose laid out by council. Do you have any questions regarding this budget action?
I don't have any questions, Lisa, but I did want to just point out to folks, and I think the council saw the letter as well. Is Lisa frozen up, or am I?
I can hear you, Angela. But
Lisa must be.
Yeah.
Lisa's been freezing all day.
Oh, Lisa, you froze. I'm sorry.
Where did I freeze at?
Just at the very end. Were you going to say something?
I just that administration would request that you appropriate the budget ordinance before you to appropriate these funds to as outlined in the ordinance.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And I was just getting ready to mention that the council has seen the letter of asking the Diversity Commission to help us determine where the $30,000 for translation service would best be spent. So just for the council's information, just to keep that in mind too as we're talking about this. Although it's not been appropriated, that was something we discussed.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Lisa? Okay, so then we'll also open up this item for public input. Again, you can raise your hand and Brandon can give you extra directions if needed, but you would just state your name for the record and then make your comments, and please stay within 3 minutes. I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Are you ready for a motion then?
I think so.
Okay. Concerning proposed ordinance 2020-16, I make a motion that we adopt.
But do we need to close the public hearing?
Yes. Is this a public hearing too?
I'm sorry, I thought that.
You do need to close the public hearing.
Yes, it is a public.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Councilmember Lopez.
I'll second it.
Thank you. We have a motion to close the public hearing by Councilmember Lopez, a second by Vice Chair Blair. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And then Councilmember Heyer, did you want to state that again?
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we adopt ordinance 2020-16.
Second.
So I have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, a second by Vice Chair Blair to adopt the proposed ordinance 2020-16, and this is also a roll call vote.
Councilmember Nadolski?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair?
Aye.
Chair Chaburka?
Aye. Thank you, and that passes as well. Thank you, Lisa. I think we'll hear from you in just a few minutes.
Thank you.
Sure. Now we have reports from the Planning Commission, the proposed Defense Depot reuse, zoning, building height in the DDR. Welcome, Greg Montgomery, Planning Manager.
Thank you. See, Brandon, are you going to pull up the slides?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I appreciate your help. Okay. So as you mentioned, Chair, this item is a petition that had been filed by the Boyer Company to amend a portion of the zoning ordinance that deals with the Defense Depot reuse area located out of BDO. And the proposal is to change the height of a certain area of the DDR from 50 feet to 90 feet. Let's see. There we go. So this gives you an indication of the location. It's the northeast quadrant of that DDR zone, bounded by 400 North Street on the south side, Depot Drive on the west side, railroad tracks on the east side, and the county fairgrounds on the north side. Next. Presently, as I mentioned, it's 50-foot height limit. I should make mention that we changed this a time before. It had been 40 feet when the ordinance was originally developed, but as advancements take place in technology and spaces are needed for different types of manufacturing uses, we have increased the height one time and now again asking to increase it another time in a certain location in the DDR. Next. So this just shows what the ordinance would look like, talking about 50 feet in most areas, but 90 feet in that area I mentioned on the northeast quadrant. Next. So this gives you a view of the size of the development. This has been generally a vacant area, large manufacturing, warehousing areas have been developed on this quadrant, which makes this also acceptable to look at some height additions, because you have the 100-foot buffer of the rail line to the east. You've got the other uses of BDO that buffer it from homes that are to the west and Marriott Slaterville, also to the south when you look at where the nature center is. So this area is really isolated in the sense that impacts are really reduced of additional height being proposed. Next. And as I mentioned, the reason for these changes are because of different technologies. Different businesses are being attracted to the facilities and trying to meet those needs of those facilities. And the Planning Commission next, when they reviewed this, have given a recommendation. Let's see, next. 9-0 to recommending approval of this revision from 50 to 90 feet in this quadrant. Questions?
Any questions for Ward? I know we also have the petitioner with us, Cameron Cook, if you have questions from petitioner, if they would like to speak.
I don't know that I have much to add. That was a great summary from Greg, but happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
I guess I do have one question. I think I already know the answer, but this wouldn't have any impact on forwarding, improving 400 North all the way through to Wall, would it?
No, it wouldn't.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I see no more questions, but yeah, and I do just want to say, Cameron, that I did hear from Mary at the Ogden Nature Center about how much she appreciated you, driving around with her, showing you the impact that it could possibly have on, the surrounding area. So thank you so much for spending that time.
You're welcome.
Okay, seeing no more questions. On this item, it does say receive input. So do we also ask for public input for this item?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Just have to clarify. Great. So anyone that would like to, that's on the Zoom call, would like to make a comment, you can do so by raising your hand and then saying your name for the record and then staying within 3 minutes. It's very hard not being able to see if people are standing up or coming closer to their computer.
Seeing no movement, Chair, I would like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
This is not a public hearing, it just so.
Oh, okay.
Public input.
Never mind then.
Thank you. Thanks for trying, though. Thank you. Yeah. Would anybody like to consider making a motion about this item?
Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2020-18.
I second that.
We have a motion by Councilmember Stevens and a second by Councilmember Lopez to adopt proposed ordinance 2020-18. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski?
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair?
Aye.
Chair Chaburka?
Aye. And that passes. Thank you, everyone. And thank you again, Cameron, for coming.
Thank you so much for your support.
You bet. Now we're happy to welcome Bryant Garrett, the airport manager, to talk to us about the Ogden-Hinckley Airport Master Plan. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Hey, I'll be brief tonight, a little less than my last session. I think we got most of the questions out on that. So if you would allow me, I'll just go through the PowerPoint presentation very quickly. All right. The master plan is an FAA required and an FAA funded obligation of airports that accept federal funds. So the cost on the master plan is approximately $570,000. And by the way, the last time we did one was in 1994, so 26 years ago. This process began with the acceptance of the grant in August of 2018. And the kickoff meeting was in October of 2018. And with any luck, this will wrap up as far as being adopted by the council into the city's plan, and should be finished sometime in the next 30 to 60 days. So the process, well, the purpose is to look at a big picture and to look at industry needs and to see where we are with the plant we have and where we'd like to be, and then to justify each of these projects and the development to the FAA because we're eager to accept their funding. The funding for most airports of Ogden's size were classified as a non-hub airport is 90.63% of the project costs. The outreach program to bring in as many people as possible to get their opinions and for them to express what their needs are. We're done in 3 primary fashions with direct interaction. The first is a survey that was done with over 200 responses. The Planning Advisory Committee, which the next slides will show who was on it, at least their positions. There were 2 public workshops, and then there's a mass of working papers on the website, email communications, and such. The constitution of the Planning Advisory Committee is listed here as such, trying to get a wide diversity of stakeholders and airport users, those with some expertise in either business or in aviation. These are the component parts, 7 specific items that are done as part of the master plan project. The first is the GIS survey, looking at the approaches and departures of the airport. Then a full inventory of everything that supports the airport, both on and off property. A forecast of what the aviation demands are anticipated to be. Then if those demands come about, what the facility requirements would be for those to meet those demands. Develop alternatives. There were 5 of them. And then to come up with a preferred alternative, which is a hybrid of the 5 features. The implementation, which is the real meat and potatoes, that's the sources and uses of funds to make this all happen. And then the last piece is the airport layout plan, which has to be submitted upon completion of the rest of this process to the FAA, and they generally take somewhere between 6 and 18 months to give the final okay on those. The forecast looks at benchmarks that exist in the base year, and that's the year you received the grant. That would be the 2017-2018 year. Obviously, you get data from the year after it's over with, so they're always at least a year behind. We looked at 3 measurements here. These are in plane passengers, and it should be self-explanatory with the term in plane, but you get on a plane, that's an enplanement. You get off the plane, it's a disembarkment. So we're just talking in plane passengers, and since ultimately all passengers to get on a plane generally get off, you could look at kind of double that amount as the amount of passengers we serve annually. Based aircraft, how many actually call Ogden their home? And back to operations, I explained that once before, but a plane lands, that's an operation. Plane takes off again, that's a second operation. These are metrics for determining how many tie-down spaces or how many places to park aircraft there are, not just the amount of parking locations, but the square footage needed to cover that. The number of buildings, how many exist now on airport and off airport, and what the total is now, how many of those that are in poor condition and how many of those that are in fair condition. Additional aircraft storage, how many aircraft are on tie downs out in the weather and want to be inside a hangar, how many additional hangars you would need, plus how many additional square footage of hangars. Listings here are just for the terminal. What's existing, roughly 10,000 square feet, designed to handle 150 passengers an hour, and pretty much utilizing just 1 gate location. Short term, looking at that moving from 1 to 2, and looking at additional passenger per hour capacity all the way through the term. Short term, intermediate term, and long term roughly refer to a 5-year horizon, 10-year horizon, and a 20-year horizon, respectively. Parking, vehicle parking, short-term and long-term for passengers, employee parking, rental car parking, and how much curbside access to load and unload. Long-term development considerations. The biggest one here is the development on the west side of the field that has very minimal activity on any part of it. And I believe it plays a huge part going into the future. looking at redevelopment, the tearing down of the old hangars and building of new ones, the infrastructures that is needed, particularly on the west side of the field, and the ultimate movement of the terminal building from where it is now, which would have a repurpose in the future, and a new facility that would be located on the opposite west side of the field. Property needs looking at any additional expansion and off-airport compatible land uses. The alternatives were designed A, B, C, D, and E, and they have some commonalities both on the air side and on land side. They also were morphed into a single preferred alternative. So on the next slide, if you look at the top, you'll see the different features on this matrix. The feature on the left side with the various alternatives across the top. So you can see how much space, acreage is provided for which functions. And then we come to the preferred alternative, which focuses on east side and west side developments, the terminal where it is now versus where we would like it to be, new hangars and the places where they can be developed, and then the infrastructure for taxiways and aprons that support that, the logistics of fuel storage, and then also land acquisition. And it's a very busy chart, and I'm sure each of you have seen it previously. There's not a ton to go over here, but the big features are the land acquisition possibilities on the top edge, which is the west edge. The orientation to this is north is to the right. And the blue at the bottom center with the green features in it, the green features are potential new hangars. And the blue area is the area that is currently developed for mostly general aviation. The capital improvement plan, revenues versus expenses, and then sources and uses where the money's going to come from. Okay, the key numbers here are, again, looking at the 5, 10, and 20-year horizons. The short term shows roughly us asking $17 million from the FAA with a local match of the 9.37% of each one of those dollars, FAA dollars, 23 million of local and other funds, and for a total in the first 5 years of $42 million. Add to that the intermediate term, taking us to $66 million for that time horizon. And the longer period and the furthest out, the 10-year period from 2029 to 2038 with 345. Now, I just ask that you focus on the extent that we're leaning on private sector third-party development at the airport. The final piece is the airport layout plan. The drawings, last I looked, there were 21 pages. They do everything from a detailed side view of each one of our approaches and departures and what obstacles are there, to noise compatibility area and the actual layout plan itself, including wind rows showing where our predominant winds come from. And this portion does require FAA approval. And then this is the list of myself and my contacts versus our two consultants that made the majority of this happen. And then I could just ask if you have any questions at this point. And I can bring this back up, or I can stop the share. And
if I may ask a question.
Please.
How fluid is the timeline for that that you just had up?
It is not chiseled in concrete, if that's what you mean. These things tend to slip. I mean, who saw COVID-19 happening? The economy comes back, we could be right on track. If not, then you may have to slip a couple years in there and push it out. That's the reason the FAA likes it if you do a master plan every say 10 years. They certainly don't want you to go 26 before you go to the next one. But it is fluid. It is changeable. It's not cut in stone.
So it's not likely to accelerate?
You could accelerate. I've only been at one airport that happened at, and that was my Florida airport in Sanford, Florida. And just the stars aligned, the growth occurred. We were twice during my tenure there voted the fastest growing airport in North America. So it did accelerate the schedule on a lot of things, and things that were 20 years out were plucked out, cherry-picked, and placed into a shorter-term environment with the FAA's approval.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Chair, sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button.
That's okay. Anytime. I won't personally.
So you mentioned about, will you just kind of review again who you reached out to get this master plan completed and who you talked to, just making sure that you talked to general aviation. We just reiterate that again for us.
Yeah. So during the process, we had 2 public meetings. They were advertised as all public meetings, plus everybody that has a badge at the airport. There are 1,500 of them. And essentially, you can't get inside the fence without a badge. Each one has an email address, and each one was given notice of the meetings as they were coming up. We had some people, even though when it was just a planning advisory committee meeting, we still had the public attend, and I interacted with them quite a bit. There was a survey with, I think, 240, I may miss that number by a little bit, but well over 200 responses. The surveys were sent out to about twice that amount, close to 500 individuals. And then the committee meetings and the results, there are a wide variety of stakeholders on the field, and many of them were brought into it. They tried to bring in each feature. So the FBOs were brought into it. The hangar owners were brought into it. There was a lot of regulatory agencies that were brought into it. But the FAA requires a very broad use of this project to bring people together to give their ideas. So it's definitely not done in a vacuum.
I appreciate that. There's a lot of very vocal people in the airport, so I appreciate you working with them. Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, that was a funny smile, Councilmember Heyer.
Well, I hear the same things you do.
Yeah, thank you so much for presenting to us, Bryant. Just so the public is aware, this is, this presentation is being held ahead of time. So if you have public comment and you're not going to join us on May 26th for the public input period for this item, you're welcome to email us, each council member individually at our contact information at Ogden City. But also we have a form that's available that you can fill out that actually becomes part of the public record if you have comments about this particular item, and then we would get that and be able to respond to you. And then you also can call a phone number that can record your message as well. So we certainly want to hear from any of you if you have questions or comments about this plan. We won't be taking action until May 26th, and that's when the public input will be taken as well. Thank you so much, Bryant.
Thank you for your time.
Now we're going to invite back Lisa Stout, the comptroller, and Justin Sorensen, senior analyst, to talk a little bit about the Ogden-Hinckley Airport and some improvements.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. The budget ordinance that I am going to present on is for budget opening, for improvements at the terminal, and then for some planning money in relation to the master plan you've just heard about. Hold on, let me share my screen. Okay. We are asking to appropriate $100,000 out of the critical contingency account in the general fund to move it to the airport fund and appropriate that for repairs at the airport terminal. Last week in the work session, Bryant had some pictures of the damage that is occurring. The hope is that we can get the roof repaired and the membrane replaced to better protect the terminal from further damage. We're also asking to appropriate $10,000 of BDO lease revenue that is remaining from fiscal year 20 as a contingency for this $100,000 appropriation for the roof, making that appropriation for this project, which is AR005, the airport terminal improvements, $110,000. We're also asking to appropriate $100,000 of BDO lease revenue to move to the airport and appropriate it to AR093 infrastructure planning for planning and design and engineering related to the improvements airport would like to have happen in the future as outlined in the master plan. Do you have any questions regarding the budget action? So this is just a report, and administration would like to request that council put this on the agenda for a public hearing to consider this a budget appropriation.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, just to reiterate that this is not any action tonight on this item, with the exception of setting a public hearing for May 26th on both items. And in the meanwhile, we can take comments and get feedback from constituents.
Chair, can I ask a
Chair Chaburka, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, Councilmember White. Just to jump in, so this is two different actions. So the first one is to amend the capital improvement plan to incorporate one of the projects for funding, and the second is what Lisa was presenting. So.
Great, thank you, Amy. And Councilmember White?
That's what I was going to say, or just make sure that I was clear that the first action is the just making sure that we include a new project on the CIP plan. Doesn't mean that it will be funded. I have to always put that in there. And then the second one is the budget amendment. Is that true? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
My understanding. Thank you, Lisa. I'd be happy to entertain any motions.
Chair, I'll make a motion to set the public hearing for proposed ordinance 2020-10, the fiscal years 2020 to 2024 CIP plan amendment.
Good job.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember White and second by Councilmember Heyer to set the public hearing on proposed ordinance 2020-10. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. That passes. Then we have the 2020 budget amendment.
I'll make that motion that we set the public hearing for ordinance 2020-11 for May 26th.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Councilmember White to set the public hearing for proposed ordinance 2020-11. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That passes. And to round out this meeting, we have one written public comment. Let me just pull it up. And I should have mentioned earlier that on all the items that we did vote on earlier, we have not had any public comment in the public forum. So it takes me a minute to get back to the right place. we talked about this comment a little bit in the work session. It's about the Canyon Road development constituent that is very concerned on many levels about development that's happening on 12th Street. And we talked a little bit with Greg Montgomery about this item during the work session. Greg, would you mind giving an update about the appeal process for this item?
Yes, because the procedure is administrative, the appeal of any decision made by the Planning Commission as an administrative role is to the Board of Zoning Adjustments. There's a 30-day time period from the decision to make the appeal. An appeal has been made by a citizen in that area, and it's scheduled to go to the Board of Adjustments on May 27th at 4:30 p.m. So an appeal has been filed on it. The appeal process is one of process rather than rehearing the case. So I think that's something important to understand, is that when an appeal is made, it's trying to determine an error was made in the decision based on how the ordinances exist, rather than to rehear it and have a new decision made. Was there an error made in the decision process?
I have a question, Chair, if I might ask Greg.
Yes.
As I've reviewed the Horace Mann community plan, there were several things in there that were important to the community during that plan process that this development did not adhere to. I know those planning documents, those community plans are not binding, but are they something that can be appealed against? Is that what this is about?
No, this is more appeal of what did the Planning Commission act on. You know, the concerns, again, expressed by neighbors are traffic impact, the type of development being proposed, the number of units being proposed. Brought into it was some things discussed about impact of the school. At the Planning Commission meeting, we actually had a letter from the school district saying that the school has more than enough capacity to handle any of these type of developments in that area. In fact, that helps in some ways reduce school class sizes, because then it provides more teachers per pupil, rather than if there are smaller total numbers of a certain grade, then generally the per student ratio per teacher actually goes up. And so the school district didn't see that as a problem. A couple of things that were brought up was the fact there is no traffic impact study done. The only traffic impact study that was done was on Canyon Road for UDOT. Mm-hmm. And UDOT determined that based on the analysis, this would not have an adverse impact on Canyon Road. Our own traffic engineers, even though at the meeting they did not make any comments about it, just took a look at the road right-of-way widths, pavement widths, and the fact that the 186 units, in terms of trip generation, half maybe go east. I mean, half maybe would go north, half would go south. You may see an increase of 200 to 300 cars per day. But the road itself has a capacity of between 4,000 and 5,000 trips per day. And so, again, that wouldn't be a factor that would ruin the capacity of Maxfield to carry traffic on it. It would be an increase of number because there would now be another connection. And when you talked about the community plans, the Horace Mann community plan identified Maxfield as an important connection needed to be made so the neighborhood has ways to get in and out. If you had a wildland fire up in that area, as we have in some other locations, and there's only one street to get in and out of, that makes it difficult. This would provide some other options. The Horace Mann community plan also identified that there should be some standards looked at in terms of 12th Street, the 12th Street Corridor Plan followed after the Horace Mann Plan. And that plan then identified a need to have a separate ordinance to look at potential opportunities along 12th Street because of the increased traffic volume as it went from a 2-lane road to a 4-lane road. And the concern being that along 12th Street, those may be more commercial or multifamily intended. I know when the 12th Street overlay plan was first approved and the ordinance was approved, many of the members of the committee felt that this area would be more of a commercial activity area at the mouth of the canyon. But again, the options in the ordinance allowed both types of uses to take place. And this developer chose to develop multiple family between the power station and the other multiple family that's to the west. One of the things that took place, and I think when you talk about consistency with the Horace Mann Plan, was that definition that was made a few years back when approval was granted to extend the 12th Street overlay zone to the brow of the hill, feeling that that was more of a Canyon Road type orientation than it was the neighborhood orientation. So that policy decision was made a few years back when rezoning took place to expand the acreage of this property to that brow of the hill between it and Canyon Road, and feeling that was a buffer between that and the single-family residential those to the north. So that's probably a long-winded explanation about, I think there's a metamorphosis that took place from Horace Mann to 12th Street to the 12th Street overlay zone to where we are today.
Thank you so much, Greg. Any additional questions or anything?
I have one question. Would they consider environmental impacts and open space impacts to this area? Does that have any bearing?
No.
Okay.
The only impacts they looked at was geologic impacts. Is the soil and the land stable for development? Mm-hmm. But in terms of those other items, we really don't have any regulations that look at those type of things, other than zoning something open space.
Is that space up there zoned open space?
No, it's zoned R1, single family.
Okay.
And then the lower part of the 12th Street overlay.
All right.
Thanks so much for jumping in there, Greg.
No problem.
Now we have time for general comments from the administration. Mark Johnson, would you like to make any comments?
Thank you. You're very kind. It's fun to see you all in your places of abode. I've been watching. I think Rich is 3 under par, but I think he's been cheating. I just thought I'd throw that out.
I cheat all the time. You never want to with me.
Well, I'm sure Bart's been watching and he's seen it. I don't know. Just 4 quick comments, and they're just kind of, we have amazing employees, but I want to call out just a couple. Tonight you got to see Ward and Kathy on the consolidated plan. Ward Ogden, good thing he's stuck here for so many years with a last name Ogden. It'd be hard to work for another city, but Ward is considered one of the very best in the business that he does. Kathy's really does a wonderful job. I just want to call out how much work they put into not only this consolidated plan, but how much they put into their jobs and what they do, what they achieve. I know that they've almost had daily adjustments during this COVID time to what they can use the money for and whatnot, and they've adjusted beautifully and done a wonderful job. Our airport's very lucky to probably have, I think, the best airport manager we've ever had. And I am grateful for Bryant and what he's brought. I think he brings a lot of knowledge and a lot of abilities, and I think he's been a great addition. Third, I just want to call out planning. We don't sometimes call out planning enough, but Greg and his staff are amazing. The knowledge level Greg has, I don't know how we'll ever replace. I'm hoping we can download him somehow, his brain, because he's got an amazing memory for things here in Ogden and has been at it for a few years. And just lastly, our finance people, Lisa, Justin, Brandy, and their team. I've never seen where we've had to redo a budget as many times as we've redone this one. I'm really grateful for what they contribute and what they do. Lisa was talking that she was working on her presentations late last night. I mean, that they work nonstop, I think. And I just think we have an amazing group of employees all over every department. And we're very proud of them and glad that they can come and help, hopefully, with the process here in council meeting. And I hope you all have a wonderful week. It's 71 degrees. So if we can get done and get out of here, we can maybe go enjoy a little bit of the time.
I hear you. Thank you.
I second that.
My pleasure. Oh, Siri's talking to me now. Any other council comments for the evening?
No, I just want to quickly echo what Mark said. We are going through some tough times and it's going to be really difficult. And I really appreciate the outside the box thinking. That doesn't often happen to those financial people. They're really very black and white. And I appreciate that they are trying to figure out the gray. And I will reiterate that time and time again over the next couple of months. So onward to the funness of the budget. So.
Any other comments? Well, I would just like to say, I really appreciate all of you and your support for the proclamation that we made earlier. I know it means so much to the community. I actually just started watching last night. I don't know how long it's been on, but there's a whole series on PBS about Asian Americans. So it's apropos to, our celebrating the month that's in honor of them, and then also having the anti-xenophobia proclamation as well. So I appreciate everybody's support on that. And I definitely echo the support of staff. The council staff has also been amazing in helping us pull off all this electronic business and other things in the meanwhile. So yeah, I really appreciate it. We have a couple more meetings to go. So unless anybody else has any comments, I think we can adjourn this one.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Great. A motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by, was that Councilmember Nadolski, to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you. And Brandon, just let me know when the recorder's ready for the next. Let the record reflect that all trustees are present. Yes, I'm looking at all of you. And we have the first thing on the agenda is approval of minutes. The special meeting of December 3rd, 2019, Board Member Lopez.
Yes, Chair, they're correct.
And the closed executive session of December 3rd, 2019, Board Member Nadolski.
Yes, Chair, they're correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Special meeting of December 17th, 2019, Board Member Heyer.
Yes, Chair, I reviewed them and found them to be accurate.
And finally, the special meeting of January 7th, 2020, Board Member White.
Yes, Chair, they are accurate to the best of my recollection, and I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion by Board Member White and a second by Board Member Heyer to approve the minutes. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So again, we get to welcome back Lisa Stout, the Comptroller, for the fiscal year 2020 to 2021 proposed.
Thank you, board members. It's a pleasure to be here. I am presenting on behalf of administration and community and economic development an overview of the fiscal year 21 budget for the redevelopment agency. You do have a work session scheduled with CED next Tuesday, I believe, where you can spend a lot of time going into the developments themselves. What I'm presenting tonight is an overview of what is included in the redevelopment agency budget. The current budget compared to the prior year budget shows a significant decrease in increment revenue. The fiscal year, I forgot to update those dates. I apologize. The blue column is actually fiscal year 20, and the yellow column is fiscal year 21. We are showing a major decrease in increment revenue. The majority of that is because the BDO increment area expired in December of this year. So the levy that happened January 1st will go back to all of the taxing entities that participated in that increment area. Ogden City was one of them, and will receive about 30% of that increment revenue. The other revenue for the redevelopment agency consists of transfers in from Ogden City, and then transfers between increment areas for housing and administrative support, and the Central Business District debt. And we'll go into that a little further as we go on. As far as the increment budget, the areas that the redevelopment agency is collecting increment on in fiscal year 21, I did correct the dates on this slide, are listed as followed. You can see Golden Links and BDO are both expiring, and we will not be budgeting any increment revenue for either of those areas in fiscal year 21. Also included in this budget is a transfer to the rec center for debt payment. This was something that happened when we built the rec center. We're allowed to transfer from specific areas. There are only 4 areas remaining in this transfer. The total amount that we're taking to help support the rec center debt is just under $1.6 million in fiscal year 21. And you can see the expiration dates there. The debt for the Central Business District will be paid off in fiscal year 2026 or 27. I apologize, I don't remember that right now. As we agree to increment revenue, generally and by state law, we are required to put money into housing. And it's, oh, excuse me, that's the wrong slide. This is a list of the transfers that are coming out of BDO lease revenue from Ogden City and being transferred to the redevelopment agency for support. The $92,000 in track line is an agreement with Ciel Royale. 25th Street, the $260 is for help with debt repayment on the Wonder Block or the Flowers Food site. The $170 in the river area is for the Hoffman Cleaner purchase. The CDB Mall debt is the $250. Continental is also the Wonder Block. It is a new area. The area itself is called Continental. And this is for repayment of Golden West Credit Union loan. The St. Anne Center is what the proceeds of that fund was used for. And we budgeted for that in Continental since it was the nearest RDA area to St. Anne's. The $80,775 relates to the Rite Aid property. There were some property purchases, and this is the debt repayment on those property purchases with DL Evans Bank. And then the Quality Neighborhoods housing commitment of $1 million is also included in that transfer. The commitment to housing and the general administrative support, those are outlined in agreements as we initiate those redevelopment areas. Commitment to housing is generally at least 20% of the area, and general administrative support is generally up to 5% of the increment in the area. So we are able to take transfers from the areas listed, and $294,000 will go to housing. $132,000 will be transferred to the general fund, and that helps us support the wages for our CED business development personnel. Currently, we have a budget in there for debt repayment.
Did she freeze again?
Yeah. Sorry. Froze again there, Lisa.
She's had a late night. You froze again.
I froze again. I get stage fright. Is that what you said?
I just hope you weren't talking the whole time. I'm worried you're going to lose your voice.
Where did I leave off?
I think the slide after this.
The slide. Okay. So the redevelopment agency budget has the debt repayment scheduled for the repayment of the 3 outstanding bonds in the Central Business District. The balances outstanding as of June 30th of fiscal year 19 totaled just nearly $17.5 million. We also have scheduled in the current year budget debt repayment for the Section 108 notes. The 2008A is in the Central Business District, and the 2015A is for the Trackline District, and the repayment for those are included in the budget before you. We also have included debt repayment for the private placement debt the city currently has, the D.L. Evans loan and the Golden West Credit Union loan. And that is just a brief overview of what is included in the redevelopment agency budget. There's a lot of information underlying that overall budget, and I look forward to having a discussion with you and community and economic development regarding this budget next week in a work session.
Thank you, Lisa. Any questions for Lisa? Looking for squares to light up.
Just wait till next week.
Okay, I'll be ready. Oh, sorry. So this is an accept for review and setting the public hearing for June 9th, 2020.
Mayor, I'll make the motion that we, concerning Resolution 2020-1, accept this this proposed budget for review and set the hearing for June 9th.
I second that.
So a motion by Board Member Heyer and a second by Board Member Lopez to accept for review and set the public hearing for June 9th, 2020 on proposed resolution 2020-1. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, someone was ready. Any opposed? Great. Thank you so much. Any comments from the executive director or representative?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from the board members?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
I see nothing at this time. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn by Board Member Nadolski and a second by Board Member Lopez. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great, we are adjourned. We'll go on to our final municipal. Great, thank you. Thank you, Brandon and Recorder. I'm not sure who's there today, but thank you very much. Welcome to the Municipal Building Authority meeting of Ogden City for May 12th, 2020. Please let the record reflect that all trustees are present. We have a report from the administration, the fiscal year 2020 to 2021 proposed budget presentation. And I see that Justin has popped up. Justin, are you giving this presentation?
Yes, I am tonight.
Well, welcome, Justin Sorensen, the senior analyst.
Thank you. Share my screen with you. All right, is everybody able to see my screen then?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so it's my pleasure to be here with you tonight, Council Chair, Vice Chair, and trustees to
discuss and present on the proposed annual budget for Ogden City Municipal Building Authority. The MBA is proposed to decrease by a pretty substantial amount from fiscal year 2020 to fiscal year 2021. The decrease, there we go. The decrease from fiscal year 20 to 2021 is about $240,000. This budget is based on the debt service obligations in the MBA. The large decrease in the budget from fiscal year 20 to 2021 is due to the refunding of the 2007 Lindquist Stadium bond. That bond was refunded during this fiscal year. It was a lease revenue bond, and it's been refunded as a franchise tax revenue bond. And with that, the collateral has changed, and so the accounting for that it will be in the general fund. And so that is the reason that for the substantial decrease is with the moving of that refunding of that bond into a franchise tax revenue bond. The remaining bond that's still in the MBA is the 2006 Public Works Facility Bond. There's approximately $280,000 in bonded debt outstanding will be outstanding at June 30th of this year. The remaining principal for that bond will be paid off during fiscal year 2021, which will leave no outstanding debt in the MBA following fiscal year 2021. Lease revenue is collected in the MBA from the general fund, and then also the water, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, and refuse funds to help pay for this 2006 bond, which was used for the construction of the Public Works Facility building. We'll be meeting with you, I believe it's next week, to discuss the MBA budget in a work session. And with that, that concludes the MBA budget. Is there any questions from any trustees tonight?
Any questions? Thank you so much, Justin. Yeah, please feel free to interrupt me if there are any comments. So this is an accept for review also and a setting or not setting of the public hearing for June 9th, 2020.
Chair, concerning proposed resolution 2020-1, I would propose that we accept for review and set the public hearing for June 9th on this item.
Second, sorry. I didn't know if I was muted or not. Second, just do it.
All right,
Whatever.
thank you.
I agree with him.
Okay, we have a motion from Trustee Heyer and a second from Trustee White to accept for review and set the public hearing for June 9th, 2020 for proposed resolution 2020-1. And this is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. That passes. Any comments from the president or representative?
Nothing, thank you.
And from the trustees? I'd be happy to take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Okay.
Motion to adjourn from Trustee Nadolski, second from Trustee Heyer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I think everybody's ready to go. Thank you. Have a really good night, everybody.
Thanks, Angela. Thank you.
Hey.